We're so pleased to welcome on set today Josh Warren, who is the head of the Board of Selectmen in the town of Kingston. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here for kind of our Kingston update.
Yep.
Okay, Josh, so winter is here. Talk.
So winter's here. I mean, today, as we sit in the studio, we're in, I think, our third snowstorm of the season. And, I think we're probably in for a long winter. Streets, Trees, and Parks has done a great job of clearing the roads. Police and fire always stand at the ready should we need to open a shelter or provide additional assistance to residents. But I did want to take this opportunity to let residents know that there is a reverse 911 system in Kingston. So if residents aren't receiving updates in the event of a storm, and we also use that system to notify folks about town meeting.
Yep.
It's a really simple process to get added to that list. You can add a cell phone, you can add a landline, and the easiest way to do it is to go onto the town website.
Yep.
And at the very bottom of the home page, there is a little icon or text that says Blackboard Connect.
Click which is that, a really great idea.
And it'll bring you through all of the steps. Yep. So if we have a weather event in January and you're on that list, you'll get a phone call. It'll tell you where shelters are, how to get there, so on and so forth.
Do you do, if there's certain road closures, if there's certain areas of the town where there's a problem, to let people know?
If it's a major problem, the first responders do a really good job of really minimizing how often they use that, so that folks just don't become numb to the text messages, emails, and phone calls. And then it's also worth mentioning that if we have residents who have additional needs in the event of an emergency, if they have to shelter in place or if they have to get into a warming shelter or a shelter, and they have oxygen, they have medical needs, they have pets, that's another thing. They can fill out a form with the Council on Aging that sort of registers what those specific needs are.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and the COA will communicate that to police and fire.
So they'll know.
Correct.
The first responders will know. Okay, that's great.
But it's, I can't say enough about how great Kingston roads have been during these first three storms.
That's great. That's wonderful. Okay, let's talk about the big thing, which it takes forever to do, is the budget, the annual budget.
So the Board of Selectmen recently voted favorably on the budget that was proposed to them by our town administrator, Tom Coulter, our finance director, Carol McCoy. And it was no small feat. Tom and Carol sat down with all of our department heads and put together what the board thought was a pretty solid budget. It's a $50 million budget, which is a 0.28% increase, which is very modest when you take into consideration some of the more aggressive goals that we have in fiscal year 21.
Okay.
One being to pay off the Davis property. So
can you talk about that a little bit? What the Davis property, just to remind people what it was, what you paid for it, why you bought it, when.
Sure.
The whole thing.
Through a favorable vote at town meeting, the town of Kingston exercised its right of first refusal to purchase over 30 acres of land that would otherwise have been developed right behind Indian Pond, sort of adjacent to the MBTA station.
Okay.
So right now we have a debt obligation of $725,000, and the budget that we approved that will now go onto the Finance Committee for their approval before residents get to see it at town meeting is to pay that off in fiscal year 21.
Because you don't want to pay interest.
Correct.
Right.
Interest, issuance fees total $23,000.
Yeah.
So we thought that residents would appreciate a $23,000 savings if we just did it all at once. It's also worth pointing out that we're looking to reinstate some staff that we had previously scaled back on in conservation, planning, and health departments. It's an exciting time in Kingston. I know we talked about that last month. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of development. And the need for these departments to be working with developers, residents, so on and so forth, it's tremendous. So
and you don't often see reinstatement of once a position is cut in a town, it usually stays cut.
Well, we're not adding to the headcount. We're just increasing hours for employees who are already there.
Great.
And there was also a proposal before the last town meeting, or I'm sorry, before the annual town. Was it last? One of the last town meetings. To break down some of the physical barriers between those offices, so to have folks that were cross-trained between each department, they could do a little bit of job sharing, they could watch each other's desks. That wasn't approved, so that did not go through. So we're going to be adding to the time of those staff members. But at the end of the day, we'll have enough staff to meet the needs.
Handle the efficiency
correct,
that you need. Okay.
Correct. But as it breaks down, the budget, and I'm just going to read off my notes here so I don't get it wrong. Of that $50 million, 51.1% is education.
How does that compare with last year?
It's always been about 50% for as long
50%.
as long as I've been in town. It's been right around that. 14% is public safety, 13% is employee benefits, 6.8% general government, and then it breaks down from there. 4.6% is public works.
Yep.
3.6% is the non-town net metering. 2.3% is debt. 2% is culture and recreation, and less than 1% is insurance fees. And I know Tom Coulter, since he's come to town, has really been working to decrease those insurance fees.
Can I just ask, what is non-town net metering?
So that has to do with the renewables that we take on. So if you look at the wind turbines, when we had, and also when we have the solar up. But that, we actually had an article at town meeting asking if we could have, I believe, a revolving fund, so that would be pulled out of the budget, and it would just make accounting, I guess, that much easier. It wouldn't be part of the budget. But we're forecasting healthy revenue. So
Great.
When you look at the projects that are coming online, again, the solar on the landfill, and this isn't the solar project that was previously presented to the town, but this is the solar project that would be on the capped landfill. Everything's a go. We're hoping to see that come online in the coming year. We have electronic billboards coming online as well. Those will generate revenue with the AG's ruling. We now have a marijuana retailer who has a host community agreement, and they will be moving forward in the process.
But that right now is stuck at the AG's office, right?
No, the AG's office has made a ruling, so now it's
where
going
is
to
it now?
Cannabis Control Commission.
Cannabis Control. So they could take anywhere from a month to 6 months.
I think the latter is probably
More likely
and even optimistic. I think we're probably
so
looking.
you won't see any revenues for
Not in the immediate future,
okay.
but we are forecasting it in the coming year.
Okay.
And then the condos at the mall seem to be moving forward, and we're hoping that those are, they have a groundbreaking in the spring.
Yep.
And that's just the start. I mean, we have this wastewater expansion that's going to be going on, and that will increase the opportunities in South Kingston on William Gould Way. So if you look at the budget, there is a considerable amount of new growth, but it's not. I guess we're hoping to undercommit and overdeliver. It's still not quite.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Now the condos at the mall, those condos are apartments.
So those are going to be, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I've been referring to them as condos, but I've also heard them referred to as apartments.
Yeah, me too. That's why I was it may be they're half and half. You don't know. Sometimes they'll have mixed use like that. Okay, but hopefully that's groundbreaking in the spring.
Correct. And again, things are moving forward there. So
that's great. Now you also had an increase of $15,000 for conservation.
Yes.
Which is really good.
Yeah, so historically, our
you don't usually have a conservation budget that's very big.
No, we've had, I think, $250 in the conservation department for land management.
Yes.
And when you have, the amount of acreage that Kingston has that's controlled by the town, that's not even enough to buy refreshments for volunteers if you're lucky enough to get volunteers to come out.
Right.
So we're hoping that with that $15,000, they can really put into play some thoughtful measures to really take care of that property to increase usage.
Excellent.
And I know that that's a goal of theirs as well, not just to take care of the property, but to make sure that it gets utilized. There's also a request, and this is the only increase to staff count for a part-time librarian, and that will be a teen librarian.
Very effective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
a lot of towns are doing that. Yeah.
Kingston Public Library has a wonderful teen room that opened, not too long ago.
Yeah.
And staffing right now, I think they're sort of pulling from here and there to make sure that they have somebody that's in there. But if it's not staffed, it's not open.
Right. And libraries are being used for everything now.
Correct. And if you go in there, I mean, there's students reading, there's students doing homework, there's students socializing. Yeah. It's a really healthy environment.
Very healthy. Yep. That's
and
wonderful.
Having somebody in there that's just doing teen programming, I think, will be a huge resource for the town.
Right. Kingston Fire Department.
Yes, so we had the Kingston Fire Department come before us recently to update their fee schedule. And, this is tremendous foresight on their part because they see that there will be a lot of growth in Kingston in the coming year. Again, with the condos at the mall, they're looking at a little bit of demolition work. They're looking at construction, of course. And by updating that fee schedule, we're going to be able to capture revenue during the demolition, during the construction, and it's also just updating our fees with what other towns are doing. So.
Okay. Yep.
And I just want to highlight too quickly. So Chief Douglas did a really wonderful thing this past month. As I'm sure you know, there was an issue with a fire department or with a fire station in North Plymouth.
Yes.
They were shuttered due to an asbestos issue.
Yep.
Plymouth Board of Health came in, told them that they could no longer operate in that facility. And Mark Douglas and his team. They made the Smiths Lane Firehouse in Kingston available to those firefighters that were displaced. And it was just a tremendous effort between the Kingston Fire Department and the Plymouth Fire Department. Great. And it's just a great relationship that I hope continues to grow.
That's wonderful. That is just wonderful. Mark Douglas?
Yes. I can't say enough about his efforts in Plymouth.
So he's the one that actually pulled that thing together.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you have transitions in the department too.
Transitions within the Kingston Police Department.
Yeah.
So we recently received a letter announcing the retirement of Sergeant Sauer.
Yep.
He'd been on the force for 35 years, and his letter was great. I mean, he talked about all the growth and changes in Kingston during his tenure.
He's seen,
that
sure.
he's seen.
Yeah.
So he saw, or he mentioned, the mall being built,
Yeah.
44 being built.
That's right.
The railroad returning to the South Shore. He talked about wastewater being brought to Rocky Nook. All these big changes that happened in the last 35 years.
Huge changes, huge infrastructure changes.
And when we accepted his retirement at our meeting, it was just great to hear members of the fire department speaking about his time on the force, and of course. Most Blaine, Chief of Police, talking about what a pleasure it's been to work with him. And of course, when somebody retires and decides that they're moving on, that creates opportunities for other officers.
Yep.
So at last Tuesday's meeting, we promoted Ryan Coulter to sergeant, and Ryan's a lifelong resident of Kingston.
Yep.
And again, hearing Chief Splain talk about Ryan's time in the department, and it actually went back as far as when Ryan was 14 years old and used to do ride-alongs with, I believe then patrolman, now Lieutenant Bobby Wells.
And now he's a sergeant.
Yes, so
full circle.
Full circle, and sort of to continue that circle, with Ryan's promotion, we have vacancies.
Yeah.
So we hired a bright young guy, and all of the recent hires, at least that I've witnessed, have just been these very smart, capable young people, and Chief Splain's done a tremendous job of bringing forth really, really strong candidates. But I had an opportunity to speak with the young man who was hired this past week. And we talked about how nice it is to see on the night where you're offered a position, somebody like now Sergeant Coulter, after 11 years on the force, becoming a sergeant.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
I think it really it helps the younger officers sort of set these expectations and gives them
path.
Correct.
Yeah, there's absolutely a career path.
Correct.
That's wonderful. And lastly, let's talk about Luminaries.
Yes.
Which
So
is a big event.
Big
Kingston.
event.
Beautiful event.
Wonderful. So this Saturday, December 21st, from 5 to 8:30 p.m. is the Luminaries. For anybody who's new to town or for anybody who's never been, the police will shut down a stretch of Main Street and Green Street, and it's just open to foot traffic. So folks can meander and meet with their neighbors. The streets will be lined with these nice little lit paper bags.
Which is what makes it so beautiful.
Correct,
Yes,
correct.
It's just
and some
stunning
years,
to look at.
Some years when there's snow, so hopefully what's coming down outside sticks.
Yeah.
It really helps you get into the holiday spirit. And the Surprise Host Firehouse is open. There's an opportunity to go into town buildings, some historic buildings, and I know the Adams Center will also be doing a few projects there. And I've been really excited to see the amount of programming at the Adams Center recently. I know for a while, especially after all the renovations were done, that was a real pain point for some people.
Sure.
We have this beautifully restored building that's not getting utilized.
Used.
And under the direction of the Adams Center trustees and now the Kingston Public Library, we're getting so much use out of that building. So if you're going to the Luminaries, make sure you stop by at the Adams Center, do some crafts, and it's just a very family-friendly evening.
Excellent. Okay. So, more to follow.
More to follow.
Well, wonderful wishes for holidays for you and yours and
Thank
everyone
you.
in Kingston. And thank you very much, Josh Warren.
I'll see you in 2020.
Okay, and that will be Town Talk.